Good morning, people of the internet. You're listening to Debi Radio 79.5 FM, a podcast where we discuss the movie Grosse Pointe Blank 1 minute at a time. I am your co-host, Hugh David.
And I'm your other co-host, Dev. And on today's show, we are going to be looking at minute 66.
So, Dev.
Not order 66, but minute 66.
Yeah, I wonder if there's what the crossover is between, the people who will get that joke and the people who watch Grosse Pointe Blank enough to listen to one of our podcasts.
I mean, given that Star Wars Minute is kind of the big thing that kicked off the movies by minute genre, I think there's a few of them out there.
Yeah, that's
I'm
fair.
not gonna lie.
That's fair.
This minute is kind of a transitional minute, as actually this week of minutes is almost. We have got Martin driving to pick up Debbie in the opening scene, and it's once again it's one of those stock footages of kind of outside Detroit, Grosse Pointe area. And then we've got Debbie losing her patience, trying to call Martin to find out where he is, but it's the hotel phone because we're pre-cell phones, although Martin has a cell phone, although I guess he didn't deign to give Debbie that number.
I get the impression the cell phone is entirely for work use in his case. Did we ever see him use it for personal stuff?
Fair. Well, he doesn't have personal stuff.
Good point. But at the same time, he's not the kind of guy who gives you that number for personal reasons, right?
No, I think the bigger thing here is that we know it's run out of battery, right? Because that was
also a good point.
Primed for us.
Very good point.
So it's the classic, oh, look, everybody's conveniently run out of battery right at the critical moment of the movie kind of a deal.
Yes.
Like, that's how we're going to get around all of the issues that we're currently facing.
Oh, dear.
And then we end with a, really awkward arrival moment for Martin, and I've skipped over one key thing there that we'll get to in a bit.
Absolutely.
So the opening minute is more stock footage, more B-roll of whatever this street is outside of Detroit. I'm gonna have to look up the name of it because I did not do that in prep.
It's okay.
We've seen it before on the setting up of the movie and the
helicopter overhead shot.
The helicopter overshot. So it's Jefferson Avenue.
All right. Okay. Cool.
That runs kind of along the edge of the Detroit River. I think it's Jefferson Avenue. It might have changed its name to Lakeshore Drive. It's one of those, and Lakeshore Drive actually fronts onto Lake St. Clair, and it turns into Jefferson Avenue once it kind of is fronting the Detroit River. So depending on how zoomed in that cameraman was, they may well actually have been in Canada at the time they were filming.
Wow, it's that close. That's amazing.
It's right on the border there. It's this weird little area where the Canadian border or parts of Canada are actually south of parts of America.
Wow.
Kind of that Windsor, Canada versus Detroit, Michigan. For folks that know their geography, know what I'm talking about. For folks that don't, are just wondering what on earth I'm talking about. So there we go. And then we cut back to Debbie. Now she's no longer sitting in the window ledge as she was in a couple minutes prior. She's actually sat on a bed, and we've once again got that very, very mood setting lighting. We've kind of commented about how it's been used in a very film noir aesthetic, both in Martin's office and in Dr. Oatman's office. Here it's not being fed through shuttered blinds. So it's the similar kind of angle, the dramatic cast shadows on the wall. But it's a much softer vibe. It's got much more of that kind of romantic element to it. It's a very warm light. It kind of reeks of that beautiful, warm, lazy summer afternoon kind of vibe that you have there.
I mean, it's got, that's the thing, isn't it? We want it to feel subconsciously. This has to feel like it's the time of year for the Leavers Ball, right? You want it to feel summery.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think most reunions tend to happen during the summer break, right?
Yeah,
so there's
exactly.
no school kids to negotiate.
Yeah, so you want it to feel
it definitely has that long summer nights kind of vibe. And then we cut back as Debbie's trying to call to the hotel room, and we've got this just a shot of a phone ringing, which that is something that you just don't see anymore, right? I mean, for a start, you don't see wired phones, but this kind of like zoom in shot of just a phone ringing that has to have the bell or the little light bulb on it so that you can actually tell that that's what's ringing, as opposed to just somebody's cell phone in the background or something. I don't know.
So here's the thing. Like historically, tell me if I'm wrong on this, right? But my understanding was that in America, those lights were there for people who were hard of hearing to know that it was there. But then what I never understood was how are they then meant to hear what's on the call? If you're hard of hearing enough that you need to see a light to know it's ringing.
That's a great point. I'm assuming it might just be certain frequencies.
Yeah, possibly.
Because phone rings tend to be a much higher frequency than speech.
Oh, that would make a lot of sense. Okay.
So you may struggle to hear that. Also, you may not actually need to hear what they're saying, because a lot of time in hotels, the phone is used as your alarm in the
Oh,
morning.
I see. Of course.
So it could just be, if it's just you're only expecting to use it for the front desk calling you in the morning to wake you up.
Gotcha.
Now, are you going to see a flashing light of that intensity if you're asleep? I don't know. I mean, I probably wouldn't, but
I just don't know any other reason for having the light. That's all, because I'm pretty sure I don't ever remember UK phones having the lights.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen one
UK
like
Baker
that
lights.
either.
I'm pretty sure we didn't have them.
I've seen some hotels where, and I think possibly in the UK as well, where it's an ADA room dedicated, that have like a big light on the wall, which is used for mostly, I think, for fire alarms, but can also, I mean, I presume could also be used for a phone.
Interesting. I'm sure somebody with greater knowledge of this will contact us and let us know. But it does actually fascinate me, this entire thing. Because I mean, modern day British handsets, the whole handset lights up. And I know BT have like explanations as to why that's the case, etc., etc. But the history of it is intrigues me. There's a lot I don't know about landline phones. You just took them for granted. Like I didn't even realize what they were made of until recently. I was like, they're plastic. They shatter if I knock them on the floor. It's like.
Yeah, but how many plastics shatter when you knock them on the floor these
Well,
days?
exactly. Almost none, right?
Yeah.
Everything bounces.
It's the OG of plastics.
Yeah.
It is Bakelite.
Yeah, it's a crazy, crazy substance. But yeah, it is fascinating. As you say, that is a shot that we don't see anymore, right? People don't need that shot. And intriguingly, the mobile is in shot. It's down the other end of the dresser.
Oh, is it? I missed that.
Yeah. It's next to the glasses.
So it is.
So it's a clear indicator.
Oh no, is it, or is that the TV remote?
Oh, I
think
can't
that
tell.
might be the TV remote.
I literally can't tell from here. It looks like
it could
be either.
It could go either way.
Yeah. I whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's the thing, isn't it? Either way, he's not in communication. He's not available.
Yeah.
But the important thing for the movie, other than okay, so the edit's interesting, by the way, because we don't cut to this phone until after she's picked up the last phone. This is very much what the Matrix will do 2 years later using computer graphics, where they will go down the line between the phones.
Yeah.
Whereas here you have to use an edit. But it is very much that kind of putting you in the phone line kind of thing. She picks it up. There's a big close up of her phone. You don't actually see her. What you can see the branding of her stereo, which is a Sony cassette. But you can't see her. And then the next shot is this here with the phone. As you say, it's very noir. Again, the noir lighting carries over. We've got the dark with the dark wood stain on the furniture, and then the light brown carpet, and then we've got this cream colored phone, and you can see the phone line, and it's almost like we've traveled from one room to the other.
Yeah. And I hadn't made the Matrix connection. I was thinking very much film noir like the all important call that sets up the whole caper of a film noir
very
movie,
much
right?
that, but that will be transformed in 2 years.
Yeah, and the Matrix is probably the last time that a major film really uses this framing, right? Of that wired landline phone being all important. And now instead you're going to get like the mobile phone kind of buzzing across the table kind of shot.
Yes.
Um,
And
with changing technology, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have the same resonance. That the something about the mobile phone, because I guess you have to have that person's number already.
Yep.
It's a much more personal thing, right? That's the ransom call. That's it doesn't have this kind of film noir, I'm calling the business kind of impact. You don't really see cell phones used for those kinds of
I
framings.
was watching a Korean
I
film
don't think.
last night, and it's set in 20. Well, I was watching two back to back, which were sequels, and one is set in 2008, and then the next one's set in 2015. And in both cases, there were moments where a character had a phone and rang another character. This is on mobile, and my first thought was, does the person receiving the call expect this other character to have had their number? Like that actually crossed my mind in both cases because it's because of who the people were and why they were phoning. It was actually important to the plot, but it was one of those things where, as you say, the number, knowing a mobile number, at least before we got into the world of burners, before you got into the cheap mass production of phones, your mobile number was sacrosanct, right? It was you. Like nothing felt like that quite before, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and also other forms of communication have come in uh, to make a phone number something that you give out to fewer people, right?
yes.
Because I mean, I have so many friends that like I see them every week and they still don't have my cell phone number because we communicate on Discord or we communicate on some other platform where it's using an internet based alias rather than a cell phone number,
Ah,
right?
interesting.
Because I mean, also I guess younger generations don't. I feel especially my generation in particular tends to avoid picking up a phone that rings, and especially in America, because honestly, in America, certainly for me, like 90% of the phone calls I receive are
Yeah,
spam,
same here.
right?
Same here.
Because
It's like that now.
the FCC does nothing to really counteract
England's
that.
given up, man. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, no, round it. One of the things I discovered several years ago is that actually certain, if you go to certain third party sales companies, so I'm thinking of a particular brand that used to be more famous than it is now for buying phones and contracts from. Um, Everyone I know who's ever gone with them, if they didn't have spam callers before they switched to that company and got their contract with that company, they had them afterwards because those contracts, the numbers, they literally batch sell the number out the back door,
yeah,
for cash, and it's in a slightly earlier version of data scraping.
yeah,
And that's that, and sometimes that gets them through the lean times, but it does mean you're suddenly on a list somewhere, and that's a pain in the bum. It won't be your name; it'll just be the number, but that's enough to be problematic. So yes, you kind of this predates all of that. You were likely to get the phone. What was the film? Oh, I can't remember which 80s or 90s film I remember seeing someone who had perfected the art of smacking the end of the phone handle that has the cable attached to it so that it would it would come out of the cradle and you could catch it,
I can see exactly
but
what you're
boom,
talking
and
about, and
then
I can't.
lift it up, right? And then you're like,
Yeah,
and it's like none of that exists anymore, right? Nobody does. There's
no,
no cool way to answer a mobile, right? It's a mobile.
yeah,
It is so different now, the culture, and the visual culture around that as well. I mean, even the
yeah.
Matrix feels dated now because of the kind of mobiles, you know.
And so the other thing that we have in this scene, and really the reason that we've cut to this phone is actually, ironically, despite what we've been saying, not for the phone to be
Yeah,
picked up.
right.
We already know what that conversation's going to be. It's going to be where the are you? Why haven't you actually left to pick me
Yeah.
up yet? Why am I still sat on my bed?
Yeah.
Is this going to be a repeat of high school?
Yes.
Um, it's actually the hand that doesn't answer the phone
Yes.
that's all important here, and this is, I mean, it's it's not a big section in the movie. It's a few seconds. It does have a bit more lead up, right? I mean, it's basically all we've talked about this minute because we have an obsession with phones, apparently. But uh, it's it's a few seconds of this movie that is somewhat throwaway,
Yes.
right? But it is kind of important because from a plot continuity perspective, this is how Felix Lapoubelle finds out where Martin
Yes.
is to actually, go and do the job that he's there to do.
Yes.
But it avoids everything that you would expect from Hollywood nowadays,
Yes.
right? The hand, I'm pretty sure, is actually Benny Urquidez's
Yeah,
hand,
it looks
right?
like it,
Like
right?
it's got that. It looks like it. I mean, maybe they found somebody else and it was a
Stun
you know
hand or
a,
hand.
a stunt hand or
Yeah.
something, but it looks like Benny Urquidez's hand, and yet they do not do the reverse shot.
Yes.
They do not get Benny's face. They do not show you that it's
Yes.
Felix. Now, I don't think that that's really done for suspense, although it could be.
Right.
And I don't know that it's necessarily done for um, time reasons. That it was shot and then it was cut in editing.
Right.
It may have been. I honestly think it's just because it's not actually that important, right? Like, if you care about the continuity of the story,
Right.
you'll figure it out.
True. And
But there's no need to like go over the top in your exposition. It doesn't need to be explained to the most base audience, which I feel is the trap that Hollywood has fallen into. And once again, and I've said it before, that is why I love this film so much, is because it's not apologetic about skipping things that it and I feel can be skipped a lot of the time, and including things that Hollywood nowadays would skip,
yeah.
but build that world, build the immersion, build the realism that I really appreciate in this
I
film.
mean, this is also about cinematic language, right? This is also about tradition. Because as you said earlier, this is part and parcel of how we films used to segue, how they used to move visually so that you don't, I mean, it's comic book framing, right? You can pause this
Yep,
moment and it looks like a still
yep,
from a comic book. And then you pause it again once it's zoomed in and you've got Benny's hand in there, and you've got a perfect
yep,
comic book coming together stage by stage where our brain fills in the bits in between. In this case,
yep,
this scene here, if you're sitting in the cinema, and that's the thing to remember, is this is shot by a guy who's used to shooting things that will be seen on a big screen, not a small screen, even though the era of the small screen is in full swing at this point with VHS everywhere, right? And the real money
yep,
being made on VHS, to be honest. But this is, if you're sitting in the cinema, this is looming in front of you. This fills the whole screen, right? It's easy enough
yep,
for us to just look at it now and go, "Oh, it's a little square on my computer in front of me." But actually, this is going to be a big, this is going to be a real kind of, as the camera pushes in, you're going to be leaning back a little bit. It's just like, whoa, big push in on this big phone. But that's the point. The point is, it's visual storytelling. We don't need
yep,
dialogue, right? We don't need anything else other than what is right there in the frame. Everything we need is in the frame. And if you were not in the cinema, if you're watching this at home and you go get a drink, or if you do what my mum used to do and do the ironing while you were watching, you're probably going to miss it, right? Because that works
yep,
for a more old-fashioned style where dialogue was everything. When people accuse a film or a TV episode of being a radio play still, that idea that
yep,
everything has to be in the dialogue because then it's snappy
yep,
dialogue and everyone gets, okay, they're up to a point, but really, the art of cinema moved into a different place after that. And Kubrick's the sort of always held up as the perfect example of this, right? And whether you think he's the perfect example or not, the majority of his films rely on visuals first, you
hmm
know?
I mean, it also like it got lost for a while, right? Because
Yes.
before talkies, it was everything,
Yes.
and then the talkies came along, and it was easy to take in radio that had been around longer, that had more, um, established processes, and lean on that, and then it, comes back in some
Yeah.
places, and
And of course, early
yeah, you're right. It's excellently
early
done.
TV, of course, was live, which meant had the radio model worked for it because you didn't have
Yeah,
time to do like cool push-ins with the camera and stuff. And it's only when you switch to, I mean, the classic example in Britain is the Avengers TV series. The first 3 years we're missing most of the first year was all shot live, so we have to rely on telecine captures of what episodes have survived, and you have to get your head around the fact that Honor Blackman will be fighting stuntmen in one scene in full leather suit, and then there'll be an ad break, and then you cut to her reclining on a sofa in a dress, and she's had to go change out of the other thing, get into the new one, get made up so she doesn't look sweaty, and be poised, ready for the thing when they come back. So in that sense, it was more like a radio play, and they were trying to push the boundaries of that until they then could shoot on film. And the moment they shoot on film is the moment Diana Rigg comes on board, and the tone and the style of the films change completely as a TV show because it now looks like film. They look like mini movies, and they're shot by directors.
Yep.
The directors who move over from the earlier season are ones who've shot film as opposed to shooting live television. And it's all, yeah, like you say, there's all these technical markers in the history of visual storytelling that kind of, you're starting to feel like Grosse Pointe Blank. The more you and I do this podcast, it's starting to feel like this is a real last gasp of that era of style, technology, visual on-screen language. The fact that they bothered to leave the shot long enough for you to be able to read clearly what's on the card.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it literally, 1986, Pointe High School, 10-year reunion dance, Pointe's Gym, .736 Lake Pointe Boulevard, Grosse Pointe, Michigan, 48236, and Michigan with guest. And then underneath, there's actually a date. It's April. Oh, I can't quite see it. This is an April something, and then it's 7 p.m. But that's how detailed that is.
Oh, and it has a theme as well. Dressed to
Yeah.
Kill. April 27th, 7 p.m. So that's actually earlier in the year than I thought it was going to be.
Definitely earlier.
Be in the middle of summer.
Yeah. But
it's a Saturday though, so.
But it's the fact that you, like you say, it's only a moment in the film, but because you and I are breaking this down minute by minute, we get to perceive these moments. This is the connective tissue that modern films dispense with. And then we cut back to,
and we do, and to a very odd interaction that maybe we should save for tomorrow's minute.
Yeah, we could do that.
Unless you want to talk about the flower toss in particular.
I'm happy to save it for tomorrow and we carry on from there. I mean, given that I was thinking, I just wanted to talk about the fact that it cuts back to Debbie at the bedroom. She's got the phone. You can see she's got her nail, because she's holding the phone up. You can see she's got her nails done. Her jewelry's ready. And she's got a very simple short sleeve green blouse on, and you can tell that actually, although it looks casual, she is ready to go out. And I think that's the important.
She just puts a jacket on and she's
and I think that's the important thing about that moment is she's lit in such a way that you see that, and then you see Benny's cut back to the phone, and Benny's hand puts the card down. Bell's hand puts the card down, and then we cut back to her and she puts the phone down. And so that it's those dual motions of, he hasn't lifted up a phone, he's lifted up a card and put it down. But ironically, he's done the same motion that you would do back then for the phone. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So
this was minute 66 of Grosse Pointe Blank podcast, Debi Radio 79.5 FM. Featuring your host, co-writers, and co-producers, myself, Dev Sodiger, and my buddy here, Hugh David.
You can find us at all good podcast players, as well as YouTube, X, and Spotify. In all cases, our handle at them is at Debi Radio, DEBI Radio. Our website also is debiradio.com, and once again, that is DEBI Radio.
And if you want to chat with us about this film or films in general, you can join us on our Facebook listeners group, which is Debi Radio 79.5 FM Fan Club.
Sure was clear that all of this was new. Concentrating hard like a little girl, smoking for the first time. It wasn't